Yeah, so I think I put it into two categories, really. I think for veterans specifically, dealing with the VA, I hear from, I think, virtually every veteran I've ever seen as a counselor or even just known personally has struggled in dealing with the kind of paperwork and just the process of the VA and getting specifically mental health care. I think secondarily to that, an issue that probably most people haven't received mental health care before is just the stigma associated with that. So kind of having a preconceived notion of what counseling is and what it is now in 2025, and that often I think of when I was younger, I had this idea of counseling as like Freud, right? You're going to sit on a couch and there's an old guy that's going to sit behind you with a cigar and you're going to talk about your mom, right? And counseling just isn't like that anymore. There's so many new things coming up, and science is really guiding some great stuff coming in the counseling world. Previously, until more recent times, a lot of their care was just directed through the VA system and the VA system alone, and that obviously is an overloaded system that needs probably its own reform. However, now there are some options for veterans to get assistance outside of that service, the VA service specifically. And so, but that still is a process, and it's still kind of that kind of bureaucratic process that we're aware of, and takes time, right? And often people aren't going and looking for mental health care when things are good. They're looking when they're in crisis and they have nowhere else to go, and this is like a last resort. And so that just complicates navigating that bureaucratic system, right, already. As I said, they're probably already in some form of crisis if they're looking for care in the first place, so either they recognize that or someone in their life is saying, you need some help and you need it now. And so when you're in that crisis mode already, and now you're maybe waiting weeks or months or longer to get an appointment or to get even the point where you can get care outside of the VA, that crisis isn't necessarily going away. It's probably getting worse, and then you're now going to be frustrated with the system, which is going to add a new layer of problem to your already existing situation, and so it's going to make things worse for that veteran or that person. Well, I think that comes back to a couple different things. So one, I think for the same reason the VA can't very quickly and in like an agile way change their system, it's also the same thing with advances in like science and scientific and counseling science, right? So there are so many things that are becoming known to the counseling world and subsequently people who seek counseling that aren't necessarily quote unquote VA approved or a process that is necessarily agreed on by the VA. Well, and when you can go and get that treatment that's maybe shorter and better outside of them, why not, right? It just makes sense. I think just speaking in generalities, I would say, obviously I work in a system outside of the VA. When I was in school for being a counselor, I specifically worked with veterans in a science research program that was technically outside of the VA, and I have a lot of stories, but I just think going back to the advances in what we know now versus kind of the old school, if you will. And I hate saying that because it's still good science. There's just other things and new things that, again, there's not a counseling isn't a one size fits all for people, and you got to find what works for you. I think so many veterans and even just civilians, when they're seeking counseling, they think of it like doctor shopping, right? If they go to one counselor and it just like doesn't work, well, that's it. I'm not fixable. It's not going to work. And the reality is you got to find a counselor who works for you and who kind of speaks your language, so to speak. Well, obviously it's going to increase the availability for veterans in the community. And I think one thing that the act will provide that maybe it's not a perceived benefit, but the reality is so many veterans and anybody struggling with mental health issues feels like they have very little control over things. And so when you're told, hey, you can only go to this person, while it seems silly, it's a level of control. And when you say as a veteran, you can go see whoever you want. If Ed out in Orlando is the counselor you want to see and he just happens to not be in the VA system, but you really, just bond well and are able to create that counseling relationship, why not? It's benefiting the veteran. And I think we've gotten away from kind of the focus, which is helping our veterans heal, and it's just become kind of this monster of bureaucracy that is like paperwork and going through that process. Just counseling in general, I got into because I went to counseling and it helped me. And I did exposure therapy, which was horrible. I hated it. I've sent people to exposure therapy and I feel bad for doing that now. Granted, it helps some people, but for me, I was a veteran. I didn't serve in combat. I've been a first responder for 28 years. I've seen my share of bad things doing that. I just wanted to help people. There are people out there that need help that maybe don't even know they need help right now. And I want to spread that word, and I want to use the forefront of science to help them move forward in their healing.